Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Successful Field Test. This week we're going to be playing an aggressive Max Siphon / Apocalypse deck, so let's just jump in and look at the deck list. Okay, so this is an Anarch archetype that's been around for a while now. What we're mainly aiming to do is use Ether as our primary breaker. That allows us to land account siphons through unknown ice quite easily, and it also enables Keyhole as our main means of actually getting agendas and winning the game. As I said, there have been quite a few takes on this type of deck, seen it out of different IDs such as Wizard before as well. Max obviously helps us find our parts quicker, so drawing cards every turn and then milling so we can recur Deja Vu, Retrieval Run, and same old thing. We've got one Levy AR lab access. A lot of the time with this deck, don't actually need to play it. Hopefully we just win the game off a single run through, get every part installed, but sometimes you do need to go back round again, play more siphons. And then the last little bit of influence spent in this deck is a copy of Apocalypse, plus this Rebirth, which we'll talk about in a second. But Apocalypse, I think, is not the primary plan still for this deck. You don't always want to land this, but when you do get an opportunity to do it, it can be really huge. It swings the game around, and it makes up to some extent for not being Wizard and not being able to fight these sort of asset spam decks, which have been preeminent in the meta for a long time. They're still not going away despite the most wanted list, so it's always worth having some sort of plan against them. If you can't just land an early Keyhole and win the game quickly, then this can be your way of swinging around the game before they get too dominant in their board state. And then I did mention this Rebirth. You'll see this in a lot of Anarch decks, but generally what we want to do with this is turn into Omar, just for that extra accessibility. Getting through to access HQ or R&D from archives can be really useful, and the fun thing about that is it makes landing this Apocalypse really easy. If they choose to heavily ice one of their centrals that isn't archives, then we can actually sneak in, land the Omar run onto that server, get into the other server, get into archives again, and blow up all their ice that they had protecting. That's how the deck aims to function. There are a few other little parts that I'd like to talk about. Playing one copy of each of the conspiracy breakers, these install from bin breakers, and those really are just support for getting into archives at the end of the game. You can sometimes install them early to get access onto a remote server that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access using Ether. And yeah, sometimes you do have to actually break into archives to steal the agendas. Speaking of which, playing 2 copies of Mad Dash, this card is really important. It's huge in this deck. Being able to guarantee an extra point off the Keyhole is really, really good. You'll often see a lot of decks running just 2 pointers, especially out of Hearth Spyroid, so this can just be that 7th point and make it so you only have to find 3 of their agendas rather than 4, which is a pretty big difference. So one of my pet cards recently has been Interdiction, and I think this card is actually pretty good now that Rune Mill is gone. It's doing a lot of work in this deck, even more so than in other decks I've played it in or seen it played in. As well as stopping them rezzing defensive upgrades, it stops them ducking account siphons, and it's also great because you can make them pre-res their Jackson Howards, so you know if there's one available when you're trying to Keyhole them. Often with a deck like this, you have to go and check remote servers to make sure there are no Jacksons out, but this card actually just blanks that completely, so that's really useful. Making them show when they have a Jackson Howard is kind of great. That about covers everything I wanted to talk about with this deck. Let's get on to game 1.